The dust of the Mount of Olives kicks up beneath the hooves of a borrowed, unbroken beast, descending toward the eastern gates of Jerusalem. A crowd is tearing branches from the trees, throwing their own garments into the dirt, shouting for a king who does not look like a king. He wears no armor. He commands no chariot. He is riding into the holiest city on earth, claiming the ultimate throne. But he is balanced on the spine of a lowly work animal, a donkey. The glaring absence of a war horse screams over the hosannas. Read that again. A conquering sovereign arriving on the back of a farm beast. Why does the ultimate king of ancient prophecy arrive specifically bound to an untamed, lowly beast of burden, deliberately bypassing the iron chariots of every conqueror before him? Picture it. The paradox at the gate is intentional. The prophet who foresaw this exact ride wrote it down 5 centuries before the palm branches were ever cut. Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9 reads, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, thy king cometh unto thee. He is just and having salvation, lowly and riding upon an ass, and upon a colt the foal of an ass." Stop right there. This is not just a quaint picture of a modest man. In the ancient world, the mount made the monarch. Kings rode war horses to conquer, their hooves bred and trained to trample infantry and pull scythed chariots. They rode mature mules only when their kingdoms were already secured in ironclad, uncontested peace. But this king is arriving to fight the ultimate war. Yet he chooses the mount of a peasant. Look closely at the text. The Hebrew word Zechariah uses here for lowly is ani. It does not simply mean humble in attitude. It means afflicted. It means wretched. It means pressed down into the dirt, crushed beneath an unbearable, invisible weight. We read this entry into Jerusalem as a joyous victory parade. The Hebrew text paints it as a march toward the slaughterhouse. The king is carrying a staggering burden, and the unbroken beast beneath him is participating in the affliction. See the scene. The untamed colt. It is not a random rental animal pulled from a village post. It is a highly specific, violently debated prophetic object, a physical key required to unlock the true identity of the rider. The ancient Jewish sages felt the whiplash of Zechariah's vision. They wrestled for centuries with the sheer indignity of it. In the Babylonian Talmud, an ancient, encyclopedic record of Jewish oral law and theological debate, the rabbis noticed a glaring contradiction in the biblical prophecies of the Messiah's arrival. They laid Zechariah's dusty, afflicted donkey on the table, and they placed it right next to another famous prophecy from the book of Daniel. A prophecy that promised an arrival completely devoid of dust, donkeys, or affliction. They saw 2 ancient prophets writing under the same spirit, 2 completely contradictory images of the exact same king, one arriving in staggering humiliation on a beast of burden, the other splitting the atmosphere in blinding, unapproachable glory. 2 destinies, 1 king. The collision of these 2 verses threatened to tear the ancient understanding of the Messiah in half. How did the ancient scholars reconcile the dusty beast of burden with the fire of the heavens? Picture the scene in the dust-choked academies of Babylon. Centuries after the biblical prophets went silent, the Jewish sages unrolled 2 scrolls on a wooden table. They were staring at a fracture in the heavens. On the left lay the prophet Daniel, chapter 7, verse 13. Read the KJV text closely. "I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, a sovereign arriving on the storm, untouchable, radiant, the ultimate conqueror descending from the atmosphere itself to claim dominion over all nations." Then, on the right side of the table, they unrolled Zechariah, the king on the donkey, lowly, afflicted, tethered to the dirt. 2 arrivals, two completely divergent images of the exact same Messiah. The Babylonian Talmud, Tractate Sanhedrin 98a, records the exact moment the ancient rabbis collided with this paradox. They asked a question that still echoes in the text today. How can the ultimate king arrive on the soaring clouds of heaven while simultaneously trudging through the dust on an unridden beast of burden? The Talmud records the answer of Rabbi Alexandri. He taught that these two verses were a divine ultimatum. He said of the Messiah's coming, "If they are meritorious, he will come with the clouds of heaven, if not, lowly and riding upon an ass." Stop right there. According to this ancient rabbinic debate, the donkey was the fail-safe. If Israel was righteous, the sky would split open, and the glory of the clouds would descend. But if Israel was broken, sinful, and unworthy, the king would be forced into the dust. He would have to absorb the affliction of his people, arriving on the lowest beast imaginable. I offer this as their telling, not as proven fact. But watch what it reveals about the ancient mindset. The donkey was never a symbol of simple modesty. It was a symbol of devastating failure. It meant the people needed saving from themselves. Look at the original languages of both prophets. They are hiding a phonetic secret that the English translation cannot show you. Daniel's clouds of heaven uses the Aramaic word anani. Zechariah's lowly or afflicted uses the Hebrew word ani. Anani. Ani. The difference between the soaring storm cloud and the crushing affliction of the dirt is a single breath, the Messiah on the cloud or the Messiah on the beast. The rabbis believed the beast was a demotion, a sign of unworthiness. But go back and read Zechariah's actual prophecy. The prophet does not frame the donkey as a punishment. He commands the daughter of Zion to rejoice greatly. He says this king on the donkey is just and having salvation. The beast of burden is not a backup plan. It is the primary weapon. Zechariah is declaring that the true king will not conquer by bypassing the dirt on a heavenly cloud. He will conquer by descending into it. He will mount the animal of the peasant, the beast of burden, because he is coming to bear a weight that a war horse could never carry. But there is something even stranger hidden in the verses that follow. We treat the donkey as an image of passive, quiet peace. We think the king on the colt simply rides into the city and politely unarms himself. We forget to read the very next verse. Because in Zechariah 9, the moment this lowly, afflicted king arrives on this dusty colt, the text pivots to absolute devastation. How does an unarmored man on a farm animal break the iron chariots of the nations? The hosannas fade. The palm branches settle in the dirt. Look at the immediate aftermath of the ride. We isolate the king's arrival on the colt as a standalone painting of humility, completely severing it from the carnage of the very next verse. Read Zechariah chapter 9, verse 10. "And I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim, and the horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow shall be cut off, and he shall speak peace unto the heathen. And his dominion shall be from sea even to sea, and from the river even to the ends of the earth." Read that again. An unarmored man on a farm animal has just decommissioned the military complex of the ancient world. Picture it. The beast of burden, dusty and afflicted, standing amidst the shattered axles of iron chariots. In the ancient Near East, the war horse was the apex weapon. The composite bow fired from a moving chariot was an unstoppable force of empire. Kings spent the wealth of their nations breeding war horses, importing them from Egypt, training them to trample infantry. Yet Zechariah writes a deliberate, physical collision. The lowly donkey does not just bypass the war horse, it dismantles it. The Hebrew word used for cut off in this verse is karath. It does not mean to slowly phase out. It means to violently sever, to chop down, to destroy utterly. Stop right there. We are conditioned to see the donkey as a symbol of passive surrender, a white flag waving in the ancient dust. But the prophet does not frame this as a surrender. He frames it as a cosmic takeover. The beast of burden is the precise weapon that breaks the battle bow. How? How does an animal bred for carrying grain and pulling plows dismantle an empire? Watch what the text does. The prophet places the chariot from Ephraim and the horse from Jerusalem on the chopping block. Ephraim represents the northern kingdom of Israel, Jerusalem, the southern kingdom of Judah. The king on the donkey is not just disarming the pagan empires of the heathen. He is disarming his own people. He is stripping away every earthly mechanism they have ever trusted for survival. The ancient Jewish scholars understood this terror. To welcome the king on the colt meant accepting the complete destruction of your own defenses. You cannot keep your war horse and have this king. This is one reading, not the final word. But the Hebrew leaves very little room for a soft, passive peace. The donkey is a threat. It is a terrifying paradox that says the ultimate victory will come through ultimate vulnerability. The unseen affliction of the king on the beast is heavy enough to crush the iron of the chariot. But this still leaves the central mystery untouched. Why this specific animal? Zechariah did not pull the image of the donkey out of thin air. He is a prophet fluent in the ancient scrolls. When he sees the king on the untamed colt, he is recognizing a shadow that was cast centuries earlier. There is an unbroken bloodline to this beast. To understand why this exact animal possesses the authority to break the warbow, we have to track its hoofprints backward, past the Babylonian exile, past the reigns of David and Solomon, past the parting of the Red Sea. We have to go all the way back to the book of Genesis, to a stifling room in Egypt where a dying patriarch is whispering a terrifying blessing over his sons. The donkey is waiting there, tied to a vine, entirely soaked in blood. Where did this violent imagery come from? And what does the patriarch's deathbed have to do with the dusty gates of Jerusalem, a stifling room in the land of Goshen? The air is thick with the dust of Egypt and the heavy, rattling breath of a dying patriarch. Jacob is propped up in his bed, calling his 12 sons to gather around him. He is not just giving a father's blessing. He is carving the destiny of tribes into the ancient timeline. He looks at his 4th son, Judah. Read Genesis chapter 49, verse 10. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Stop right there. This is the foundational prophecy of the royal bloodline. The scepter, the absolute rod of earthly dominion, will belong to Judah. Kings will rise from his line. David, Solomon. But Jacob says, this earthly kingship is temporary. It will hold the scepter only until Shiloh come. Shiloh. It is a mysterious Hebrew word, heavily debated by ancient scholars. But the consensus of the Jewish sages is absolute. It is a title for the Messiah, the one to whom the authority rightfully belongs. When Shiloh arrives, the earthly kings step down, and the ultimate, eternal sovereign takes the throne. Picture it. You are standing in that room. You have just heard that the ultimate, world-ruling sovereign is coming. You expect Jacob to describe a conqueror with a sword that splits mountains. You expect an iron chariot. Read the very next sentence. Genesis 49, verse 11. Binding his foal unto the vine, and his ass's colt unto the choice vine, he washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. Read that again. The ultimate sovereign of the universe steps into the biblical record, and his first recorded action is tying a beast of burden to a plant, and not just any beast. The exact same animal that will carry the afflicted king into the gates of Jerusalem 1,000 years later. An ass's colt, a donkey. Zechariah did not invent the lowly rider. He was looking backward. He was watching the dying patriarch's prophecy finally walk out of the desert and onto the Mount of Olives. The king on the donkey is Shiloh, but sit with the violence of the image Jacob paints. The English translation softens the blow, making it sound like an agricultural metaphor of abundance. He washed his garments in wine. It sounds like a harvest festival. Look at the Hebrew underneath. The text says he washes his clothes in the blood of grapes. The word for blood here is dam. It is the exact same word used for the literal blood of sacrifices, the blood of warfare, the blood of the slain. And look at where he parks the beast. He binds the foal to the choice vine. The word is sorek, the finest, most delicate, most valuable red vine in the vineyard. In the ancient Near East, you do not tie a donkey to a fragile grapevine. A beast of burden is heavy, restless, and strong. It will strip the leaves, it will panic and rip the vine out by its roots. To tie a donkey to a vine is an act of calculated destruction. Unless the beast is not there to destroy the vine, unless the beast is being bound to the vine to share in its crushing. This is one reading, not the final word. I offer it as the paradox the text demands we face. Jacob is prophesying a king who arrives in staggering authority only to bind his lowly beast of burden to a mechanism of crushing, resulting in garments soaked in deep, dark red. The rabbis of the ancient world saw the blood on this king's clothing. They saw the donkey tied to the vine, and they knew it was not a picture of a peaceful harvest. They recorded a terrifying expansion of this exact verse. What did the ancient Aramaic translators see when they looked at Shiloh's blood-soaked garments? The rope pulls tight against the trunk of the sorek, the choicest red vine in the ancient vineyard. The animal tied to it is breathing heavy, shifting its weight in the dirt. It is a beast of burden, tethered to a fragile, life-giving plant. This is the exact image the dying patriarch Jacob carved into the timeline of the Messiah. Read Genesis chapter 49, verse 11 again. Binding his foal unto the vine, and his ass's colt unto the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. We read this in English and see a poetic metaphor for a massive harvest. We picture a king resting in a vineyard so overgrown with fruit that he casually ties his animal to a vine, the grapes bursting so heavily they stain his royal robes. Look closer at the Hebrew text. The word Jacob uses for the juice of the grape is dam. It means literal blood. It is the exact word the priests of Leviticus used when wiping the altar. Dam, the blood of the slain, the blood of the sacrifice. The king on the donkey is not arriving at a festival. He is walking into a slaughter. Picture it. In the ancient Near East, the winepress was a mechanism of absolute destruction. Grapes were thrown into a stone vat and crushed under heavy feet until their skins burst and their life poured out. It was a violent, physical tearing. To wash your garments in the blood of grapes was an ancient prophetic idiom for walking through a battlefield of staggering carnage. We do not have to guess at this. The prophets who came after Jacob used the exact same imagery to describe the terrifying vengeance of the Lord. Look at the prophet Isaiah. Centuries after Jacob's deathbed, Isaiah saw a vision of a solitary figure walking out of the desert, his clothes completely soaked in red. Isaiah chapter 63, verses 2 and 3. Wherefore art thou red in thine apparel, and thy garments like him that treadeth in the wine fat? I have trodden the winepress alone, and of the people there was none with me. For I will tread them in mine anger, and trample them in my fury. And their blood shall be sprinkled upon my garments, and I will stain all my raiment. Stop right there. Same red garments, same crushing of the vine, same blood. Isaiah sees the ultimate sovereign treading the winepress alone, his clothes stained with the blood of his enemies. Jacob sees Shiloh, the ultimate sovereign, washing his clothes in the blood of the grape. Two visions, one crushing. But Jacob adds a detail that Isaiah leaves out. Jacob includes the beast of burden. Jacob binds the donkey directly to the vine. See the scene. The donkey is a work animal. It exists to carry an unbearable weight that a human cannot lift. Jacob is prophesying that when the true king arrives to tread the winepress to execute justice and absorb the wrath of the nations, he will tether his beast of burden to the very mechanism of the crushing. The affliction of the king, the blood on the garments, and the lowly animal of the dirt are inextricably tied together. I hold this as one reading, not the final word. Test it against the text yourself. But know that the ancient Jewish scholars did not view the blood on Shiloh's garments as a peaceful metaphor. They saw a conqueror. They saw a king arriving to dismantle empires, riding a specific animal, wearing robes soaked in deep, dark red. When they translated this Hebrew prophecy into the everyday language of the people, they did not just translate it, they expanded it. They opened the scroll and wrote down exactly what they believed this blood-soaked rider was coming to do. The ancient Aramaic translations hold a terrifying record of this exact donkey. What did the Jewish scribes write when they looked into the bloody winepress of Genesis 49? The stone floors of the ancient synagogues in Galilee and Babylon were thick with the dust of exile. Centuries before the Roman occupation, the Jewish people gathered here to hear the scrolls read aloud. But Hebrew was no longer the language of the street. It was the language of the sanctuary. To understand the text, the people needed a translator. They used the Targums. Aramaic translations read alongside the Hebrew scrolls. But Targum Jonathan, an ancient Aramaic paraphrase of the prophets and the law, did not just translate the words, it expanded them. It recorded the oral traditions, embedding the ancient Jewish interpretations of what the text actually meant directly into the reading. Go back to the dying patriarch in Genesis chapter 49, verse 11, binding his foal unto the vine, and his ass's colt unto the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. When the scribes of Targum Jonathan arrived at this verse, they did not translate the blood of the grapes as a peaceful harvest. They stripped away the agricultural metaphor completely. They wrote this: "How beautiful is the King Messiah, who is to arise from among those of the house of Judah." Stop right there. The Targum explicitly names the rider. The man tying the beast to the vine is not just a king of Judah. He is the ultimate prophesied Messiah. The Aramaic text continues with terrifying violence. He girds his loins and goes forth to battle against those that hate him. And he kills kings with princes. And he reddens the mountains with the blood of their slain. His garments are rolling in blood. He is like a presser of grapes. Read that again. The ancient Jewish translators looked at the donkey tied to the vine in Genesis, and they saw a blood-soaked conqueror reddening the mountains with the slain. They saw a sovereign who carried such absolute, devastating authority that his very garments were soaked in the aftermath of a cosmic war. I offer this as their telling, an ancient lens on the text, not an infallible doctrine. But watch what it reveals about the world Zechariah was born into. When Zechariah prophesied the king arriving in Jerusalem, lowly and riding upon an ass, he was not speaking into a vacuum. He was speaking to a people who had been taught for generations that the Messiah's donkey was the vehicle of a violent, earth-shattering reckoning. The beast of burden was intimately tied to the blood-soaked garments of Genesis 49. The king must bear the affliction of the dirt, and he must tread the winepress of wrath. The lowly beast of burden carries him into both. But there is a detail hiding in the physical nature of the animal itself. A detail that explains why this exact beast is required to undo the curse of the earth. Zechariah specifies a colt, the foal of an ass. When this prophecy is finally fulfilled centuries later on the Mount of Olives, the text adds a highly specific, unbreakable condition to the animal. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 11, verse 2, the king commands his disciples to go into the village. He tells them, "Ye shall find a colt tied, whereon never man sat. Loose him, and bring him." An unbroken colt, an untamed animal. Picture it. A beast of burden that has never been broken to the yoke. An animal that has never felt the dominion of a fallen human being. The ancient Aramaic scribe saw a blood-drenched conqueror riding a beast of burden into a cosmic war. But there is a reason this specific animal must be completely untamed, a reason pulled directly from the shadow of a fallen creation. Why must the king arrive on a colt that has never known the crushing weight of a human rider? The edge of a dusty alley in the village of Bethphage. Two men place their hands on a coarse rope, untying a young animal that pulls nervously against the tether. They are following a highly specific, physically dangerous command. Read the Gospel of Mark, chapter 11, verse 2. The king tells them exactly what they will find, and saith unto them, "Go your way into the village over against you, and as soon as ye be entered into it, ye shall find a colt tied, whereon never man sat. Loose him and bring him." Stop right there. An unridden beast. In the ancient world, you do not ride an unbroken colt into a chaotic city. An untamed donkey is wild, unpredictable, and violently defensive. To sit on the spine of an animal that has never felt human weight, and then ride it directly into a screaming crowd of thousands waving branches, is a recipe for absolute carnage. The animal should panic. It should buck the rider into the paving stones. A physical impossibility. Yet the text demands this exact, untamed animal. Why bypass a trained, docile beast for one whereon never man sat? Look at the ancient law of the sanctuary. The requirement for the most sacred rituals in Israel always demanded an unbroken vessel. In Numbers chapter 19, verse 2. The ultimate sacrifice of purification, the red heifer must be an animal upon which never came yoke. In 1 Samuel chapter 6, when the Philistines return the stolen ark of the covenant, it must be pulled by animals on which there hath come no yoke. Sacred weight requires an untouched bearer. But this colt is not carrying an ark of wood and gold. It is carrying Shiloh, the king of Genesis 49, whose garments are prophesied to be soaked in the blood of the grape. He is claiming the beast of burden, but he is demanding a beast that has never been broken by the curse of fallen human labor. See the scene. When Adam fell in the garden, his dominion over the earth fractured. The ground was cursed. The animals were subjected to the terror of men. For thousands of years, the beast of burden had carried the crushing, exhausting weight of humanity's exile from Eden. The Apostle Paul writes in Romans 8 that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. The donkey is the physical embodiment of that groaning. The yoke is the ultimate symbol of the fall. But watch what the text does here. The king approaches the untamed animal. He sits on the unbroken spine. The crowd begins to scream. The palm branches wave wildly in the air, and the beast does not buck. It walks steadily down the dusty slope of the Mount of Olives. The wild, untamed colt submits instantly to the man on its back. This is not just a display of calm riding. It is a terrifying flash of unfallen creation. The animal recognizes its original sovereign. The second Adam has stepped into the dirt, and the fractured dominion of the earth is snapping back into place under his feet. I hold this as one reading of the ancient patterns, but the physical reality of the scene is undeniable. The king is absorbing the affliction of the beast, and the beast is yielding completely to the true king. They are marching together toward the eastern gates of Jerusalem. the blood-soaked conqueror of Genesis 49, disguised as a peasant, riding the ultimate mechanism of ancient peace. But as the hooves finally hit the pavement of the holy city, the shadow of the winepress falls over the temple itself. What happens when the unbroken colt finally carries Shiloh directly into the seat of earthly power? The hooves of the unbroken colt finally strike the massive paving stones of Jerusalem. The dust of the Mount of Olives settles in the valley behind them. Go back to the image where we began. A sovereign arriving without armor. A crowd tearing branches from the trees, throwing their own garments down in front of a lowly farm animal. You have read this triumphal entry 100 times. But today, the parade is not what it seems. The animal underneath the king is no longer a simple picture of peasant modesty. It is a terrifying, highly specific mechanism of prophecy. Think of the ancient sages in Babylon staring at the fracture between Daniel's soaring clouds of heaven and Zechariah's crushing dirt. Anani and Ani, the difference of a single breath, the realization that the ultimate king had to absorb the affliction of his people before he could ever claim the sky. Remember the shattered chariots of Ephraim. The beast of burden did not surrender to the warhorse. It dismantled it. It broke the battle bow, proving that the ultimate victory would arrive only through ultimate vulnerability. And tethered to this animal is a bloodline stretching all the way back to a stifling room in Egypt. Jacob's dying whisper. The beast of burden bound to the sorek, the fragile red vine. Targum Jonathan's terrifying vision of Shiloh, the ultimate Messiah, his garments completely soaked in the dark red aftermath of a cosmic war. Same blood, same vine. And finally, the physical impossibility of the ride itself. A wild, unridden colt submitting instantly to the second Adam, the unfallen creation recognizing the one who came to lift the curse of the earth. See the scene. The donkey is carrying Shiloh through the eastern gates, but it is not carrying him to a velvet throne. It is carrying him directly to the winepress. The blood of the grape is waiting on a hill just outside the city walls. The king on the beast is arriving to execute the ultimate conquering, not by violently shedding the blood of the nations, but by offering his own. The garments will be stained. The affliction will be absolute. The beast of burden carried him to the exact place where the heavy, ancient burden of the entire cosmos would be transferred off the back of the creature and placed entirely onto the Creator. But the text leaves us with a lingering silence. We know how the crucifixion ends, but the biblical record goes completely quiet on the fate of the colt. Once the king dismounts, the beast of burden vanishes from the text forever. When the ultimate sovereign returns, in the book of Revelation, the sky splits open, and he is riding a white warhorse. The soaring clouds of Daniel finally arrive. But the lowly, untamed donkey is left at the gate, its thousands-year-old assignment completely finished. The dirt is still holding the rest of its story. I hold this as one reading of the ancient shadows, one way the threads tie together from Genesis to the Mount of Olives. I am not handing you infallible doctrine. Test it the way the Bereans tested everything. If you stayed with me all the way to the city gates, comment the word "watched" below, subscribe to the channel, and send this to one person who loves the ancient prophecies but has never heard the violent, forgotten history of the king's donkey. The true sovereign did not save the world by bypassing the dirt. He saved it by riding straight into the crushing.